Shalom, shalom. This is Yud Yah with Hebrew News. Let's get into it, you guys. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's blessed. We have some bad news to come out of the family, the extended family, and we send prayers out to that family. This is Hebrew News for March the 11th, 2025. We are getting into some wild times today. We're going to talk about a couple of things. We've got some scripture on the board right now, and we'll get into that too. But we want to start off with the news, you guys. We want to start off with what's going on in the news. Our first report is that the stock market has dramatically declined. We must talk about the intense decline in the stock market. So let us bring up the window capture here. All right. A little bit of technical difficulties, but let's check it out.
Headquarters in New York, I'm Manish Granny alongside Danny Berger. Welcome to Bloomberg Brief. Let's set that agenda.
No pain, no gain. President Trump declines to rule out a recession and says the U.S. faces a period of transition. Those comments weighing on Treasury's equity futures down into the red.
Notice he said that the U.S. is facing a period of transition. We will talk about that.
After stocks posted their worst week since September. And Canada has a new prime minister. Mark Carney demands respect from the U.S. and vows to take on the tariff fight. Good morning, Manis.
Danny, good morning. It was a brutal week for stocks last week, and we start on the back foot this morning, down 3% on the S&P 500, the biggest weekly fall in 6 months. We're starting the fourth week of decline in these equity markets. The Nasdaq already in correction. Well, it blipped into correction on Friday. If we continue at this pace, we will be firmly there. Laurie Calvasina at RBC says a garden variety pullback has finally begun. The risk is now these markets draw down 14 to 20%. Roll it over to the bond market. Extreme movements have been the real narrative here. We've gone from exuberance to despair. And of course, this tariff risk is now from an inflation risk to recession risk. We've got $119 billion worth of 3s, 10s and 30s, along with the CPI and the PPI later this week, coming in the bond market. 424, Danny.
All right, so what we can see now is that as Trump's coming into office, he's making some sweeping changes to the country, one of which is imposing tariffs on some of America's major trade partners. So what would this do to the United States? What do you guys think that this is going to do? The outcome is going to be what people are already talking about, is a recession. And so we've actually been in a recession for a little while, especially for the middle and lower class. Of course, there's always a sense of recession. But what politicians have to do is they have to mask their efforts to destabilize the economy by doing something that will seem to be altruistic. We know that these tariffs, the excuse that Trump is using is to boost the economy and bring wealth back to America. And really, if I can use the word control or exert authority over the nations that are around, in particularly Canada. But what this is going to do, instead of, bring revenue into the United States, is actually going to destabilize the economy. And what you see happening here is that large investors are pulling out of the American economy because there are these major changes happening. What that means is, for the average American person, the dollar will be harder to spend. Do you understand what I'm saying? You will not get as much for your dollar as you used to. People that are in the market right now are experiencing major losses, and these major losses are going to have an impact trickling down through the entire economy and then also to the entire population of the United States. You guys, this is deliberate. We talked about, I don't know if I talked about on this channel just yet, but you have to understand that as Trump was coming into office, there were several things that happened that would signify the type of time that Trump is on. If we understand that the wildfires that were in California were deliberately set, you guys, there wasn't a natural disaster. It wasn't anything that was caused by, arsonists that were, playing around. People would say, campfires or any of these things. No, these were deliberately set fires to a political opponent. If you guys understand that California is really the liberal capital of the entire country, even more than New York. So when a Republican or a conservative politician is coming into office, it would be a publicity causing event to have a disaster in an area that is their political enemy. And so this is what Donald Trump did as he's coming into office. He and his team started these fires in order to pose at least, if you could say, a picture of the enemy in danger to exert his authority over the enemy, if that makes sense. It's like negative publicity, because he is able to now that his people are in place, he's able to do more things, attack more areas than he did before he was in office. Being in office, or just before he's in office, gives him the ability to utilize the FBI, utilize the DEA, utilize all of the wings of government in a way to cause these terrorist attacks. And one of the attacks, of course, we know was starting the fires. So this is another terrorist attack, you guys. What the tariffs are actually doing is hurting Americans. What the DEI scalebacks are doing is hurting American employees. You have government workers that are being laid off all over the country. You have, people that are homeless from the fires all over California. You have now the stock market going down with these tariffs that are being placed on trade between Canada and a lot of other countries too. And it's causing the price of goods to go up. They're saying even a carton of eggs right now in the United States is $14, $15. You guys quote me on that and correct me in the comments if I'm wrong here. But $14 for a carton of eggs. This is what Americans are experiencing at the same time as losing their jobs. People that are in government jobs that have thought that they've had job security for years are having to make very, very tough decisions right now. These are all terrorist attacks against America. If you guys can remember the drones that were coming out in New York, the light shows that were happening from these drones. From whatever that they said that it was, they didn't say what it was initially. And this was a psychological terrorist attack, something that is pseudo-spiritual in nature. These are the things that you should look for from any administration that comes forth from Babylon, you guys. Give me 1 second. We will go on a show break. This is the first topic, and if you guys want to hear a little bit more about what's going on, we will continue this topic in another program. We will go to a show break for just a brief moment, and then we will come back. All right, you guys, give me 1 moment. All right, we are back. So the next topic we will get into here is something that is going on. Oh, and so I haven't quite finished with this one yet. There's a couple more things that I want to say. So you guys, you have to understand what is going on here with these events that are happening. You have to know that you're looking at the beginnings of a world government. You're looking at the trappings of world governance. And we know that for a fact because of the scripture, you guys. Of course, the scripture. So let's just read here in Daniel chapter 2, and then we'll also look at Daniel chapter 7 here. It says, and this is in Daniel chapter 7 where Elohim through Daniel is interpreting Nebuchadnezzar's dream. You guys, Nebuchadnezzar's dream is really important because it is a prophecy that was given to a pagan king, not just any pagan king, the pagan king that destroyed the most set apart place on earth. Elohim Yahweh chooses to give this prophecy to him. It would be worse than giving a prophecy to Trump, because we all know that Trump is not on our side, right? It'd be worse than that because Nebuchadnezzar publicly and viciously destroyed the entire nation of Judah and sent many into captivity, destroying the temple and, doing the most damage to the kingdom of Israel, that is, than anybody else ever did up until that moment, you guys, and maybe a contender for the worst that's ever done to Jerusalem. So what we have here is a prophecy, a true-to-life prophecy being given by Yahweh, Elohim, to the most evil person on the planet, you guys. And so we have to understand that that is a reality that was happening in the time of Daniel. Nebuchadnezzar was the sword of Elohim, doing his will, whether he knew it or not. And so we have to look at things in that perspective too. But we also know that in these understandings that these people are out trying to hurt us, but the things that they do may end up benefiting us in the long run. So let's just describe here what we're looking at so that we can see what's going on here. This is the last kingdom, the kingdom of iron and miry clay. We know that is the kingdom of Gog and Magog, right? It says, and the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break into pieces and bruise. This is what that last kingdom is known for. We're talking about Gog and Magog, the last kingdom, the kingdom of feet, the kingdom of iron and miry clay, feet and toes. Let's keep reading. It says, and whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. We see that that the kingdom of Gog and Magog split into 3 sections, you guys. So it's not a single kingdom. It's a divided kingdom. And even in those 3 sections, they're divided into tribes and clans and groups within those sections. And, it becomes abundantly clear when you start doing any of this research. We know the Germanic factor, the Viking element, went directly to the west and conquered Germany, conquered England, conquered France, conquered all of England, conquered all of Europe, and ethnically cleansed Europe white. We know that the Romans weren't white, but they were lighter skinned. But we also know that there were large contingencies of Hebrews in all of these areas, so much so that they ran portions of these areas in Germany and in England. And when the Magogites were coming down, the Romans and Hebrews fought side by side to try to stay off the Magogite army. They ended up failing, and then being ethnically cleansed out of Europe. And this is why we see the white race of people in Europe right now, because those particular Magogites were the ones that carried the whitest genes. They're the ones that had a lot of blonde hair, a lot of red hair, a lot of blue eyes, and all white skin. These were the Vikings, you guys. These were that group of people that were known as Goths. These Goths came in and took over Europe in about 575, but they weren't just one group. They were the Ostrogoths, they were the Visigoths, they were the Alans, they were the Angles, they were the Saxons, they were the Lombards, they were the Vandals. Lots and lots of different groups, you guys, but they all worked together and worked separate. You had a whole other group of Magogites come through the Caucasus Mountains and invade Asia Minor and change the racial makeup of Asia Minor as well. Ethnically cleansed Asia Minor. This group fought the Roman Empire in the East, Eastern Orthodox, and were not as successful at first as their cousins in the West. They were going to the South, but they did eventually break through and take over both the Eastern Orthodoxy and then also Islam. You're talking about the Seljuks, you're talking about the Huns, you're talking about the Magyars, you're talking about the Bulgars, you're talking about all of these different Magogite tribes that came down and fought against one another sometimes, with one another sometimes, but always against the indigenous people of the area, which were ancient Greeks that were darker skinned and Hebrews and other Shemites. Pushed everyone down, either killed or pushed everyone down into Africa, you guys. And then in the east, to the far east, you had a whole other group of Magogites, you guys, and these people were again ethnically different from the other two groups. Now, these of the group in the Middle East maintain white characteristics too, but just a little bit more paler skin. But you guys, I'm an Iraqi veteran, right? I went to Iraq in 2003, and one thing that I was surprised about when I went out there was the abundance of red hair, blonde hair, sandy blonde hair, blue eyes, green eyes, gray eyes. Because, you know, when we were in combat, you wouldn't have thought that, okay, well, you're going to be around the civilian people, so you're going to see what this community looks like. But we actually were mostly on patrol and less in combat, and we got to exchange with the community. Now, most of the women of the community were wrapped up, and, you know, you couldn't really see what they look like, a whole bunch of different hair colors. But at the college, which was in the place where I was in Ramadi, Iraq, if anybody's familiar, the college there, the women did not have to wear their hijabs, so you got a chance to see red hair, blonde hair, brown hair, all sorts of different styles of hair. And not only that, green eyes, blue eyes, gray eyes, a lot of gray eyes. These are characteristics that are all recessive and have to come from a specific place, you guys. There was a guy that looked like he was a little bit darker, that was one of the contractors in Iraq, and didn't come back with me, wasn't deployed with me, but I met him later on, and the brother looked black. And he had, not only did he look black, he had 360 waves, right? And so not only did he look black, he had, black texture hair, maybe just a little bit of mixture in there that looked, how we would figure Middle Eastern would be, but definitely looked like someone who had a lot of black genetics in his line. And so he said that the Arabs were originally black. This is what he told me when I was in school. He said, yeah, the Arabs were originally black, and the ancient understanding of who is Arab and who isn't is that anybody that had a different color eye than brown was not originally Arab. And this was their ancient technique for knowing who was actually who. If you had anybody that had any different color eyes, they were not original Arabic. They were outsiders. And that's these Seljuks, these these Magyars, these Huns, this group that came from the same place where you see the blue eyes and the green eyes from white people. And so the skin color is not the only defining characteristic, but it is one of the major ones. And then also, if you know the history, you can follow the people groups. You know, you won't find any black people groups that come from this area unless there were slaves there. All people with lighter skin and lighter eyes. Not only that, you have to the west another group of Magogites, which was controlled by Genghis Khan. If you do any history on the Eurasian steppe, where Magog comes from, you'll know that the ancestors of these Magogites were called Scythians. And the Scythians split up into several different groups. One of those groups went east and was way later on, but ended up being the tribe of the Mongols, where Genghis Khan comes from. There's a statistic about China, and you guys forgive me if I'm getting this statistic wrong, but is it 1 in 4 people in the Chinese population trace their ancestry back to Genghis Khan himself? 1 out of 4 people trace their ancestry, and then if I've got this statistic wrong, you guys correct me. But 1 out of every 4 was able to trace their lineage back to Genghis Khan, which means that what he was doing was slaughtering everyone and impregnating everyone, so that most people in China's got 1 billion people, most people in China are actually descendants of Genghis Khan. And so what that means is you literally have all the Hamites and all the Shemites either spread out in captivity all over the world as small pieces, or in the continent of Africa, shoved in between the sub-Saharan region and South Africa, you guys. All of Shem and all of Ham, and then even some, apostate Japheth, is smushed into the African peninsula, even running from the invading Mongols, the invading Huns, and the invading Vikings, coming from all 3 directions from the north, as Scripture predicts. This is the fourth kingdom that is diverse. Even the characteristics of Asian people, you wouldn't say that you would think that they had white characteristics. But I want to show you guys something. We were talking about the world map here, the Trump world map. But let me show you guys the people of Kazakhstan. I think it's Kazakhstan. It's a country in Central Asia that's right near the Caucasus Mountains. These people appear to be Kazakhstan people. These people appear to be both white and Asian, you guys. You see they have Asian features and they have Russian features, you guys. Isn't this the weirdest thing? Have you guys ever seen anything like this before? I've never seen anything like this before. I hope it's showing the correct screen, because it looks like it is. But you can see these people have white characteristics and they have Asian characteristics. It's because the Chinese people are the further blend, or the further people, the specific people that come from a specific place, but they all blend together, whether it be Middle East, whether it be the West, or whether it be the East, as in China, Japan. These people, America, Canada, Germany, France, Netherlands, Switzerland, all of those European countries, Italy, and even into North Africa, Algeria, and then other places, make up the Western Front of Magog. The Middle East, where you have Afghanistan, where you have Iran. Iran is a name for Aryan. It's the same word. Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, you guys. This is where the Ashkenazi came through. Do you see what I'm saying? They came through, of course, through Europe, but then migrated into the Middle East. This is this middle group of Magogites that came down from the Caucasus Mountains, the Ashkenazim, or even other groups as well, that flooded in this area and ethnically cleansed it. Do you see what I'm saying? And then in the Far East, you have the same thing that happened with the Mongols in China, that took over, ethnically cleansed. This was the black population in China then. Took over, ethnically cleansed, and now you literally have this Gog and Magog world. You see the connection with these people, these Chinese people that could also be Russians. They're Chinese-looking people that could be Russians, but they're not in either place. They're in Kazakhstan. And where is Kazakhstan, y'all? It's in what's called Asia, but if you'll look at it, it's right above the Middle East, you guys. So here is Turkmenistan, is Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Pakistan, Iran. All of these places are flooded with the descendants of Gog and Magog. The further west you get, or the further east you get the Mongolian branch. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm sorry, let me get this out of the way. The further east you go, you get the Mongolian branch. When you're in the middle, you get the Hunnic branch. And when you're in the west, you get the Gothic branch. And that goes all the way down into northern Africa. It goes all the way over to the Americas. And then it goes all the way down to South Africa and, of course, Australia and them over there. But this is what you're looking at with the Magogite takeover. This is this kingdom. Let me just continue to read from the scripture here. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise, saying that it'll take over the whole world. It says, and whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. But there shall be in it of the strength of the iron. Remember, the iron kingdom was the Romans, and the Magogites continued that tradition of Roman Catholicism in the places that they conquered. Even though they weren't the inventors of Roman Catholicism, they took over the traditions as if they were, and then pretended to be. It says, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. Do you understand that you have these three factions of Magog that seem to get along sometimes and seem not to in other occasions? You have the kingdom of Russia, which is Gog and Magog. You have the kingdom of China, which is Gog and Magog. You have the kingdom of England, Germany, Europe, which is Gog and Magog. You have the kingdom of America, which is Gog and Magog. And then you have the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Iran, United Arab Emirates, all of those different places with money. That's the Hunnic. These are the Hunnic Gog and Magog armies, kingdoms. And so this is that divided kingdom. And look at what it says right here. This is why it's partly strong and partly broken. This is why they've assumed all Abrahamic religions, because they didn't have these religions before. It says, and whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Do you see that? This is where we get into Genghis Khan, where he has mingled with lots of different seeds, but mingled in as much as he possibly could, changing that part of the world to his complexion. It says, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. This means they're not going to join together as one people. What it means is all the males will be killed and all the females will be, pardon my French, but raped. All the males will be killed and all the females will be gone into, so that the next generation is completely different. This is what the Magogites did all over the world. It says, but they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. This is exactly what happened. That nobody really mixed except for the women that were forced to. Everybody else was killed off. It wasn't a dual kingdom like Media-Persia. It wasn't a symbiotic relationship. It was a parasitic one. It says, and in the days of these kings shall the Elohim of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Do you see what I'm saying? So this is that kingdom that is right before the kingdom of Elohim. We see it again in Daniel chapter 7 in the interpretation of the beast, the fourth beast in particular. He says, then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured and brake in pieces, I hope you guys can hear me, and stamped the residue with his feet. Stamped the residue of what? The residue of Israelites. Remember, this is the fourth beast, which comes in after the kingdom of Rome. And then Rome was the kingdom that dispersed the Israelites. So the residue of the Israelites were then trampled underfoot by this particular king. It says, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, of the other which came up before the 3 fell, even of that horn had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. It says, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Here we are talking about now making war with the saints and prevailing against them. So which kingdom here do we know that was making war with the saints? We know specifically the kingdom of America that comes from the Gog and Magog, the more stout than his fellows, the one that is prevailing against us right now. It says, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom, that is the Israelites. The saints are the Israelites, you guys, and then their companions as well. You see, this is the kingdom right here that is at the end of the world, and this is the kingdom that we are in right now, you guys. That kingdom is consisting of kings. And if you haven't seen the things that have been happening, you will have known that, or if you have seen the things that have been happening, you will know, and I'm not going to keep this up here for long, but this is what Donald Trump has been trying to portray, not only in the media, but about himself. And I want to bring one more image up here so that you guys can see what Trump is signaling in the propaganda that he is unleashing on the American public. And it'll give me 1 second here while I find this reference. I know I have it here. I've got it on one of my other broadcasts here. So I think I have it. You guys bear with me. I'm not seeing it right now. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing it. It should be in there. But you guys have seen the picture of Donald Trump as the gold statue. And I'm not sure why I'm not seeing it. It should be there. Not seeing it right now, you guys, but you have seen the picture before if you have seen the, let's just take a look at this. If you have seen the video that recently came out, I guess I will just go ahead and search for it. We'll cancel that. Cancel. All right, so you'll see the, and give me a moment to search for it. I don't know why I like typing from this bar. Trump golden statue. You've seen this. So they don't want to, there it is. This one right here. from the video that he just recently put out. And they've actually got him like the idol, right? The idol as a bull. But this one is even more important than that, right? Trump Gaza as if he is the statue of gold. Do you understand what I mean? And Daniel, the very next chapter, you have Nebuchadnezzar with, let's just take a look. The very next chapter here. And now this is the important part. People have misinterpreted the golden idol as the calf. But this is the person who he's trying to replicate here. It says, Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. So here is the image that Trump is trying to show you, that he is the modern day, he is the modern day Nebuchadnezzar, that he is a member of the statue, you guys, that he is a king along with the other feet and toes. This is what he is portraying with this picture, you guys. And so we understand that from a prophetic significance, that this is not a mistake. This is not just, idolizing oneself. It's specific propaganda meant to evoke a supernatural and historical and prophetic understanding. This is how the end of the world is going to be. You must be able to see the signs. We know that even the term Trump is a reference to the last Trump. You guys understand? That doesn't mean that Trump is righteous. That doesn't mean he's going to do anything that is of any consequence to the people of Israel, except for try to persecute us, which we know that he is doing by unleashing all of these style of terrorists. I guess this is where the real point lies, that this is the style of governance that you have now in the world, that you have, instead of governance, you have terrorism. You have different acts of terrorism that this kingdom of 10 has waged war now against its own people, whether it be China, whether it be Russia, whether it be the UK, whether it be Canada, whether it be America. All of these different nations are unleashing this style of terroristic activity against their populations in order to subjugate them. This is the style of kingdom. This is the last kingdom, the feet and toes, iron and mirror clay kingdom that does not mesh with everybody, that does not mesh with anybody. This is what we understand through prophecy, and this is what we must understand by the events that we see. This is why we can't get overly drawn in to any propaganda event at all. This is what they say here in Ghana, at all. And so, you guys, I did want to go ahead and give you an update on some of the things that are going on. What's happening now with the stock market crash, with the markets dropping based on the tariffs. This is an economic attack against the people by President King Donald Trump, King of America now. Expect more of these type of terrorist attacks, whether they be the fires, whether they be the economic instability, whether it be the firings, the layings off, whether it be surveillance, whether it be drones, because drones equal surveillance. All of these different styles of terroristic activity are coming from this administration, you guys. So we will be covering it. You guys buckle up. We know that the prayers of the righteous will cover us from all danger. But if we do fall into danger, we do not fear death. We do report about what's going on, though. So again, you guys, hopefully everybody's out there staying safe. This is Yared Yao checking out Hebrew News.